Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Real podcast. We're so excited that you're with us. Each and every week, we're going to open up God's Word. We're going to have some discussion around what it means to live an intentional life. So let's listen in as we try to get real together.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Get Real podcast. My name is Brandon Ginden, and I am the senior pastor here at Real Life Ministries, Texas. And I'm here with my good friend and ministry partner, Lori Arnold.
Hey, y'all.
And also our friend and part of our church and just friends with my wife and I, Crystal Reyes is here joining us in this episode of the Get Real podcast. We have been in a series on living out your faith in the workplace. And we have Crystal here. We're going to be asking some questions and about how she walks out her faith and lives her faith out in the workplace. And hopefully this has been an encouragement, this whole series, and a blessing to all of you on what it looks like to walk out our faith in the world around us and in our workplaces. And I know Lori and I have talked about it's sometimes kind of easy in the sense of we are in ministry and in the church all the time, and although that comes with its own fun challenges, but to be able to bring different folks on that we have relationship with and talk about what it looks like to walk out our faith. And so if you have missed any of those episodes, I want to encourage you to go back and watch those. And again, as we always say, if this has been a help to you, to share it with your friends and in social media and to let people know as our and this podcast continues to grow. And so, Crystal, we're going to jump in. And so maybe let's just start out, kind of introduce yourself, what you do, the work world that you live in every day, and share that with our audience.
I'm a green coffee trader, so we import green coffee from all over the world to sell to roasters here in the U.S. I work for Inter-American Coffee, which is part of Neumann Coffee Group, which is one of the largest coffee companies in the world. Okay. Anywhere that produces coffee, we have an interest all over the world.
Wow. Coffee, and I love coffee.
I know you do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your specific role then within all of that huge operation is, what does kind of your day-to-day look like a little bit?
Well, my specific roles in the company, I'm responsible for buying specific types of coffee, very few, but I'm on the purchasing team. I run the Houston office, so I mean, really, ultimately, what that comes down to is if no one takes the trash out, I've got to make sure it gets done. You know, it's not as exciting as it seems. And I'm a trader, so I have a customer base that I'm responsible for selling to and making sure that they have what they need. Okay,
that's great. So, in that world, what is the kind of the spiritual climate, I guess, that you work in, and maybe kind of describe that for us?
It is so all over the place.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure like any industry, you have, pockets of believers here and there, and you have to, having a large customer base, you have to interact with and make sure that you have a good relationship with people of all faiths, of no faith. So you have to be a little bit careful. You don't want to be the weird Jesus guy that just kind of turns people off and they don't want to have that conversation. It can be a little bit difficult to navigate, in the HR climates that we all live in these days. You have to kind of be careful of anything that you say and offending anyone. It seems like the most offensive thing these days is Christianity. That's the one thing you can't talk about. Any other type of diversity that you're involved in seems to be celebrated, whereas Christianity seems to be the one thing that, why don't you just, that's a personal thing. You need to keep that to yourself a little bit.
Okay.
In my company, in my office, I feel like there's a little more openness to that. I was reading something about the different types of faith in the workplace, and it was, faith averse. There were 4 different types. They just didn't want to do anything to do with it at all. Okay, you do your thing, but kind of keep it to yourself. And then there was welcoming, and then there were faith-based companies, something along those lines. And I would say that it's the industry as a whole, I suppose, is maybe faith tolerant. And then you have some pockets of believers who have started coffee companies. There's some around here, that's kind of their whole business model, which is great. But again, you don't want to get in that little pocket and not be able to reach people as well.
Sure.
So in the day-to-day, I guess I've found and this was kind of a challenge because I was like, why do they want to talk to me? Like, what do I have to offer here? Yeah. So it was a challenge to me of, what am I doing and how am I living my life and on a day-to-day basis, and looking at it and thinking, I could do better. I could do better, and really looking at things and how I move forward. But I guess in the day-to-day, I was thinking about it, and we were talking about it in small group last night. If you were accused of being a Christian, what would be the evidence against you?
Yeah, sure.
I was like, wow, what am I doing here? Yeah. And I hope that just in the way that I treat people and interact with people, and having people that are, at least on the diagram there within my employ, how I treat them on a daily basis and how we handle things that go wrong, and how I care about them, not only from a professional standpoint, but a personal standpoint, because our small office in Houston now is just 6 people. You're pretty tight in a room with 6 people all day long, and we're in a pretty small space, so we get to know each other really well. Our lives are intertwined. We interact all day. There are people of different faiths there, and I always joke all the time when things are going on, I hope you're right with the Lord. I hope you're right with Jesus. And it's kind of said in a little bit of a joking way, but I'm also not shy about what I believe, how I spend my time, to some extent how I spend my money, and just kind of what the focus of our lives are. What did you do this weekend? Well, we had a church event on Saturday, and then we were at church on Sunday, and we went out with our pastor on Friday night. My life is very entwined in spending time with not just the church, but people of the church. They all understand that the people that I spend most of my time with, this is where I know them from.
That's great. That's great. There's when you were talking, it made me think of, Lori, you and I have talked about this in the past, about some of the other circles that you've worked in, whether it be through some of the acting or singing outside of here. And when Crystal was talking, I was thinking about that, about the element of entering in. So like you were describing, kind of entering into the conversations about kind of words or stories that you share about what your experiences were that weekend. We did this at church or that. It's kind of those, almost like setting it on the table kind of as a test to open the door to that. And so I'm going to ask a question to both of you, kind of think, so I'll let you think about this a little bit because I'm springing it on you. You're used to it. But like that whole issue of maybe the importance of, or the value of sharing those little bits from your life, and kind of seeing how, like, opening the doors, opening conversations, creating where people may ask, or, kind of putting the line in the water kind of thing, and seeing what the Lord does with that. Right. And so what are your kind of, how have you seen that work? Like, how have you seen that play out in the workplace, or being able to have that influence as you've put some of those things out there and people kind of respond to that? So I'll ask you first, and then Lori, maybe you kind of answer that from what it's been like for you.
I guess, most of my work life is spent on the phone. Most of my relationships with my customers, I have customers that I've sold coffee to for close to 30 years that I've never met. Wow. If I hear their voice behind me, I know who it is, and I know what kind of coffee they like, and where they're located, and about their dog and everything. But most of my relationships are over the phone or email these days. Of course, now everything's digital. But it is just that, well, what did you do this weekend? Or, oh, you've been out for a while. How did you get stuck in Spokane? Oh, well, my husband, we were on a church trip. And it kind of, oh, tell me more about that. Or totally other direction. And then it's like, okay, they don't want to have that conversation. We met an interesting guy when we were in Spokane, and there was kind of a coffee connection. He paints murals, and he had done this mural in a coffee shop, and one of my coworkers follows him on social media. And I was like, hey, how do you know this? Like, how do you know this guy? And we kind of start making those connections. And I was like, well, he's very interesting. I've seen his work. I met him in Spokane, and kind of goes on. I was like, well, I met him at church. And gone.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's the easiest way to open the door. Is just all I do, I just talk about me.
Yep.
I mean, that sounds bad, but I just, when we're having a conversation, I just tell the truth of who I am and what I've done. And sometimes that kind of opens the door. And then I've had some very bold customers. I used to work part-time, and I guess maybe it wasn't known that I was part-time, but I still had the same customer base. So there were a lot of days I wasn't there. So there were people that were, this person was supposed to cover for me. And I had a lady call me one morning, and she was like, I've been thinking about you. And she said, you've been out a lot. When I had her, I hadn't, she didn't realize I only worked 3 days a week. And she said, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, because I had cancer a couple years before. She had known about that, and we had talked about it. And she was like, well, can I pray for you? Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's bold. Like, I don't know her like that. And I was, and I had that conversation in the office, and I was like, she called me, and I was just so touched by that. And I told them, why can't I be that bold, to call someone and start asking questions like that? Because coffee's not known as being, a faith-filled industry. I guess they are, everyone can be to some extent, but that's not really kind of what we're known for. So, a challenge like that, I wish I could be that bold and would try to be more bold.
Sure. And I think the part I want to really pull out is just you're utilizing kind of the everyday conversation, the everyday life, to just look for doors or opportunities to just to share more about who you are. You said talk about me, but no, you're sharing who you are, and just paying attention to those open those doors and those conversations, and versus kind of coming in kind of the street corner. You need repent or burn, turn or burn kind of types of things with our faith that can send people in out the door kind of things, versus just talking about everyday life. I think that's really, and that's a good thing, and that's great. Lori, the thoughts you had?
Yeah, I think that's great, especially the, can I pray for you? That question right there, it changes things a lot of times, because oftentimes we'll see even on social media, if something happens, people write, continued prayers or but when you have but when you have that conversation, or when people do, when you're paying attention and listening to people and seeing how long have they been gone, like those kind of things. She asks you, are you okay? Is everything okay? But it's those little subtle things sometimes, like asking, can I pray for you? And even if it's not, can I pray for you? And you just tell somebody, I'm praying for you. Or a lot of times I'll say, I'm praying right now. When I'm praying right now, it's a little different than getting the text. It's just like the praying hands. Like letting them know I am praying right now. And they know like, oh, this is a little different from the little prayer hands and the heart emoji, which I do send too. And I mean it when I send those too. But it's those asking that. Also, I've seen teachers use their email. And one of the things I know that for a time, it seemed like a lot of people said blessed, #blessed, like everything was blessed. But now I don't see that as much anymore. And everybody is not using that word as we once were. And what I've noticed, when I see it from one of like my kids' teachers in an email, have a blessed day, I'm like, it makes my ears perk up a little bit. And I'm like, I think they go to church. I think they might be believers. And so even saying, so even when I interject something as subtle as that, that can, it makes people's ears perk up a little bit. Right. Just those, like you said, it can just be some words, certain words that we say. Right. So, very subtle, practical things, and just showing your true self and communicating, this is what I did, sharing your life. This is what I did for the weekend, and not being afraid to say those things, which that's the easy part, right? Just sharing what you did. Yep.
That's really good. Yeah. You used the term when you were talking about the lady that prayed for you about boldness and being bold, and you're talking about not being afraid. Maybe share, because I can speak to this because I've seen, what the Lord has done in your family's life, and with your husband James is my friend, and seeing what God's done in him, what the Lord has done in you. I've seen grow in that area of your life of your faith and boldness. And so maybe kind of share with people what has helped you with that, or how, if there was somebody, at their workplace, they're kind of struggling, being afraid, or being, taking some little steps of maybe boldness in their faith, and not having that fear. Maybe what are something you've learned, or something you would say, man, think about this, or encourage people to, what are your thoughts on that?
I had an interesting conversation with a guy I worked with. He and I have been good friends for a long time, and he had kind of a life-changing experience in a boat.
Okay.
Boat capsized. He's hanging off the side, all this with his son in the boat. And,
Whoa.
And I said something along the lines of, "You got a little Jesus that day," because everything was okay, and he was like, "You know what? I'm a changed man."
Wow.
And we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how's that going? And I'll always tell him, I hope you're right with the Lord. And he's like, I've been going to church. He's so excited about it because I saw a change in him. And I think we talked about this a little bit. His son had gone to one of those rodeo camps, the Christian rodeo camps where at the end they ride a bull, which I don't. Somehow that all fits together. But he was just amazed. And I think we talked a little bit about this. The Lord can use anything to bring people to him, whether it's capsizing your boat or, riding a bull.
Right.
I would have never put that together. I see my cousin ministering to people at a brewery all the time, and my aunt's always like, oh, he's there with some beer and Jesus, and, you can use anything. So, but you just, I guess, have to look at those little windows and those little openings. But I'm very, I guess, open about the things that have happened in my life. And I've had people ask me, how do you come out on the other side of that?
That's so
being
good.
so positive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is, I know where I'm going. I know the end goal. I know the destination. There's always going to be some detours and bumpy roads in between.
Sure.
And it's just a matter of how we navigate that.
Sure. That's really good.
I guess the first really difficult thing was when my husband got cancer, because we were very young. We'd never really been through anything like that before. We had small children, and so it was very scary. And finally I had to slap him around, not physically, but and say, look, this is where we are, and this is where we need to be. Let's just figure out what's in between and just do it. Stop whining about it and stop being, freaking out about it. Just let's figure it out and just do it. And I guess that is maybe a different mindset than a lot of people have. They want to dwell in the in-between. And, we just got to get from here to here. We know how we're going to get there. We know what's going to help us, but just do it.
Yeah, that's really good. What I love is you have a great ability to, just even in our conversation, you go right to the real and the practical out in life and what it just looks like in the everyday conversations and all of that. Lori, one of the things that you talk a lot about is getting your eyes up and looking to see, what God is doing around you. And maybe I just want to throw it over to you. It's kind of, you're listening to her and, advice to the audience and all of that issue of kind of get your head up and looking around. That's definitely something I hear Crystal, in her workplace and all of that that she does, thoughts that you have on that. Yeah.
One thing that I love that you said was that it's something you're still working on. And that even when we asked you about doing this, you're why are they asking me? And it made you really think about what you could do differently. And that's what this is for. Yeah. That's what this is for. So if there's one thing you take away from this, it would be that. So I thank you for sharing that and for being transparent, because even me working at a church, there's still things that I can do differently, and that I need to seek the Lord and his guidance in the way that I am representing him well, with the people that I work with. And so I think that is huge. And one of the things I keep hearing you're talking about relationship, you're building relationship with people left and right. And that is giving you the right to speak into their lives. That is giving you the right to do that.
And it's funny you say that, because we talk a lot about that. We were talking about that just last night in our small group. All of the things that we talk about in discipleship making are really corporate theories as well, right? I mean, you can apply those to a workplace and should. Even the discipleship wheel. People start out, they're new hires, and you kind of go around all these different cliques of things. And it's kind of the same in a professional environment. It's just a different relationship that you're trying to build.
So good.
But your faith feeds into that if that's who you are as well. Because all of the people, not only in my office but other offices, I have to build a relationship with them for them to trust me and have some form of respect for me professionally, because I have to interact with them, and they have to trust what I'm giving them, or the decisions that I make, or the things that I tell them are going to work or not going to work, or the things that I'm setting up for them to work within. They have to respect that, or at least they have to trust me that I have some idea what I'm talking about. And it's all about building relationships, and whether it's business or faith or family, you have to build relationships to be successful and just to be happier. No one wants to just sit there alone, but when you have 6 people sitting in a room interacting every day, and everything that we do is connected. It starts with this person, and every person in the room has to touch it. And if everyone's not firing on all pistons, it stops somewhere. The weakest link or the weakest link and all that. So so it's all about building relationships and progressing along that wheel, which I've often said is a spiral instead, because you never really finish it, right? Because you get to this point, but within that point is all of this as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So you just keep on. The wheel keeps spinning.
That's really great. One of the things that as a closing thought to what you had said, and you said it really fast. I don't know if y'all in our audience caught it, but Crystal said, it has to be who we are. And it's one of the things that we talk about is, living out our faith and walking it out, whether it be for us every day in the church and whether I'm going to go preach a sermon or do a funeral or a wedding or whatever, it has to be everywhere that we go. It's who we are. Or if we're trading coffee and it's on the phone with a customer in some foreign country. And so hopefully that's something that you all take about it, just that this is a lifestyle that we live. Following Jesus, walking out, being a disciple of him is a lifestyle that we live. And so, Crystal, thanks for being on here and taking the time to be here. Yeah. Well, again, for all of you that are part of our audience on the Get Real podcast, just thank you. And I want to just encourage you, continue to keep following Jesus and walking with him. And if this episode today really blessed you, you just share it with your friends. And so, God bless you all.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Get Real podcast today. My hope each and every week is that you're able to take the content, apply it to your life, that it becomes more of who you are and less of what you do, and that we live an intentional life together. If you're interested in supporting the work of ministry here at Real Life Texas, we'd like to invite you to do that by going to reallifetexas.org/give and supporting us today.